Tonight on Insight, when your life is a lie, who's getting conned and why do people do it?
I loaned her close to $100,000 to help the legal fights. And even saying that out loud, I feel like an idiot.
He was going to make a song with 50 Cent in a Broadway show called The Tinder Swindler, but don't believe a word that is coming out of his mouth.
You went from being a senior public servant to being incarcerated.
It could have all been a hell of a lot worse.
You did 12 months in a low-security prison and started up the same scam again. Why?
You go back to what you know.
Cecilia, viewers may recognise you from the Netflix documentary The Tinder Swindler. How did you meet the man who called himself Simon Leviev?
Well, we matched up on Tinder back in 2018. And we met the next day for a coffee in London at a very fancy hotel we were staying at. He was my type, and he's very charismatic, very ambitious type of person, and everyone was just drawn to this person around him.
The morning you met him in that luxury hotel in London, what did he tell you about his life?
Well, he said he was the son of Lev Leviev and that he now was the CEO of LLD Diamonds, which is this big diamond company. And he said, like, well, my dad's the king of diamonds, and that means what? And it's like that he was the prince of diamonds.
He asked you to go to Bulgaria with him later that day on a business trip. What was your reaction when he asked you to go?
I'm the kind of person who would rather regret something that I did do than didn't do. So I felt safe seeing the people around him, the team that he had. So, yeah, I took a shot and I said yes.
So who did you meet when you say the team around him?
Well, it was a lot of people. It was several drivers. I met the daughter and the mother of the daughter, business partners, a private assistant. He had a bodyguard. There was a lot of ruckus around him that day.
From that first date, how quickly did the relationship develop into something more serious?
Very quickly. It was something that I've never experienced before. It was flowers on the door, like morning calls, midday calls, like all the time. It was like the constant bombarding of love pretty early on.
Were you falling in love with him?
Yeah, God, it was this type of relationship I've never had before, where you feel he feels the same as you're feeling towards him, you know. It's still difficult to see images of him and that way.
Why is it difficult?
Because it just reminds me of the periods that were good and where he was a very kind, caring person that you felt would do everything for you. It was just something, our values aligned, kind of how we're looking at family. He was very, as I now know, adaptive to the kind of person you want him to be.
Around the same time, he was telling you that his work is dangerous. In what way?
He said that he had done very well in the diamond industry and the competition had started making death threats towards him. And then he started telling that everything was going to be fine. And then I was not to worry, but then things just turned worse instead.
After 3 months together, everything changed. Let's take a look.
In the middle of the night, I get a picture of Peter, Simon's bodyguard. Simon is writing, "Peter hurt," and I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, this is the night.
Can you write your first name? Oh, I can write it.
Yeah, ambulance.
Can you write that?
He just says that they were going after me. Thank God for Peter. If not, I would have been dead.
It's okay, love. It's okay, love. I told you we're in a war. We need to be strong.
I didn't know what to do. And he just says, "We're safe now. We're being taken care of, and you just need to go to sleep." The next morning, Simon sends me a voice note.
Because of the situation, the security and everything, they told me I'm not allowed to use my credit card.
Cecilia, you ended up letting him use your credit card. Was that all he asked for?
It was always the credit card, but a credit card is maxed out. So I started taking up loans to then fill up the credit cards for him.
So all up, how much money are we talking about here?
It ended up with over £200,000.
Sean, you also met someone on Tinder, a woman you knew as Arrow Anderson. How did the relationship progress?
First date, we went down to Fremantle. It was a nice afternoon, and she brought along a 7-month-old baby, which I knew she was bringing on. She did ask that was okay beforehand, and just the most adorable little guy, big blue eyes and a big buff head that just laughed at any, like, bashing spoons on the table and laughing, and obviously I got along well with her as well. Yeah.
Within a few weeks, she told you some quite serious news about her health. What was that?
Yeah, so I don't know at exactly what point it was, but she told me that she had a terminal cancer, liver cancer, but she'd had it for a while. It was a terminal diagnosis, but it would fluctuate between 6 and 12 months, and yeah, she told me she was dying.
Did that illness sort of shape your relationship?
Yeah, hugely. She'd still be active, so I wasn't like a full-time carer or anything. We'd still do normal life stuff, normal relationship sort of stuff. There was obviously an element that would always sort of fall onto me. If she was unwell, I'd have to look after the kid and have to look after her when she wasn't feeling well.
And you were also expecting your own child together, is that right?
We went over to Adelaide to spend Christmas with my family. While we were over there, told me that she was pregnant and that we were having a kid.
How did that pregnancy go?
We went to a restaurant with my parents. As you do, we told them we were having a baby, and we all cried and hugged, and it was all very exciting. And then, a few weeks later, she had sent me a message that she'd had a miscarriage, and that was the end of that.
That must have been hard to hear.
Yeah, very hard.
Arrow went missing and you went looking for her. What did you find?
She didn't message for almost half a day, and then she wasn't even answering my calls at night, so I was really worried something might be wrong. There was a house of a guy called Tim, who she'd mentioned a few times, who was a friend of hers. And I get to Tim's place and found out she was there at Tim's place, and she actually managed to get out of this. Even me walking in on her in his bed, she managed to get out of the house, give me a story about how he's gay and he was just, he's a friend of hers and he slept on the couch, and this whole big story. And so I was like, well, and you want to believe it. So I was like, well, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I think now I look back, that day was definitely like the beginning of the threads unravelling.
Sharon, 11 years ago, you fell victim to a romantic scam online. You paid a pretty high price for that. How did it end up?
It ended up with me being arrested at an airport in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and accused of being a drug mule.
Did you spend time in jail?
I spent 2.5 years in prison.
Your story was made into a drama based on your book about the experience. Here's a look at the moment that changed your life.
Those are very highly confidential papers, and that's why they're hidden under the lining. They're supposed to be documents.
Vamos a hacer una revisión al estómago. Luego la policía la llevará al hospital para que revise sus cavidades corporales y haga también...
You will now be strip searched and taken by police to hospital for an internal examination and X-ray.
Sharon, obviously that's the movie, but is that how you remember feeling?
She does that very well. That's
Right.
exactly how I felt.
How did you end up with 5 kilograms of cocaine in your bag?
I thought I was carrying those documents for a man that I'd met online some 5.5 months previously, and he had fed me a story that he was a civil engineer and that he had scored this multi-million-dollar contract and had asked whether I would, as his fiancée personal assistant, on behalf of the company, pick the papers up in Argentina and carry on to London, where he supposedly was.
And you trusted him with that story at the time?
At the time, I trusted him totally.
How did this man, who you knew as Frank, come into your life?
I had moved to Brisbane some 6 months earlier from New Zealand, and I was struggling to find work. I had a cousin that similar age to mine, to myself, and as a bit of a laugh, she signed me up to a dating site. It was in that time that I was contacted by Frank.
And what made you want to sort of connect with Frank?
I was fed a very convincing story that I could relate to.
Did you feel like you were falling in love with him?
Totally. Which probably surprised me more than anything else. But at that time, yes, I did believe that I was falling in love.
Ari, you're Sharon's daughter. What did you think about your mum's relationship with Frank?
We're always happy, wanting our mum to be happy, and he seemed like a lovely guy to start with. But it wasn't too long before I started to see a few red flags, not wanting to meet with her, and the further on down the track it got, you saw more and more red flags. She started to hide some stuff from us and became a little bit secretive, and when I started to think that he may not have been real.
Did you know about your mum's plans to fly to Argentina?
No, I did not. She'd moved back to New Zealand and she called me at, I think it was about 8 o'clock the night before she was ready to fly, and told me that she was flying to Argentina the next morning.
Sharon, you were arrested at Buenos Aires airport. What were you charged with?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was something along the lines of attempting to traffic drugs.
So you went from being a senior public servant to being incarcerated in a South American prison. How did you cope with that?
I don't want to minimise my experience really, but it didn't take me long to come to the conclusion that it could have all been a hell of a lot worse. They could have trafficked me through a country with the death penalty. I wouldn't be here. If I'd arrived in London, what would they have done with me?
What was Frank's reaction to this news?
I don't know, because I've had nothing to do with any of them subsequently, but I am aware from my family that he tried to make contact. He sent a message that he was concerned about why I hadn't turned up in London. My sister's response from my memory was, basically saying, if you really care about my sister, then you need to tell us what the fuck's going on.
Jonathan, you met and quickly became best friends with your new neighbour, Marianne Mayer Smith. What drew you to her?
Well, she was charismatic, she was friendly, she had an interesting past, and she was funny and sparkly. And my husband and I'm a gay guy, FYI, that comes into play a little later. And I was drawn to her immediately. I'm a television producer in Los Angeles, and most people here are so fake that here was Mayer Smith, appeared to be like a woman who laid it all on the line, and you always knew how she felt. Boy, was I wrong.
What did Mayer tell you about herself?
Early on, the first few weeks of our friendship, when I confided in her that part of my family kind of disowned me because I'm gay, she said, with tears in her eyes, she said, well, my family disowned me too, because they're trying to get me disinherited from this $25 million Ireland estate. She told us she was from Ireland. She had a framed copy of the Irish Constitution hanging in her living room with a signature at the bottom that she'd point to and say, that's my great uncle. And I just believed everything. And I kind of felt, I fell in love with her. As much as any gay guy can love a woman, she became like a sister to me. I cared about her. And all of a sudden, we weren't just friends, we were two discarded souls cast out by our families who found each other in Los Angeles. And she was a fixture in my life, like a sister, for 4 years.
Mayer started asking you for money. Did you wonder why a wealthy woman needed your money?
So once I found out that her family's trying to disinherit her, I warned her. I said, listen, they know the owner of the company you work for. What if they set you up? And then one day I get a call from jail, from Mayor, telling me, "You were right, Jonathan. They set me up to make it look like I stole $200,000. Oh my God." I paid $4,200, bailed her out of jail, and she paid me back the next day. So I felt confident at that point loaning her more money when she would ask for it, because the drama kept unfolding. All of a sudden, her family paid off a dirty district attorney in LA to freeze her bank accounts, and she had no access to all her money. So I started lending her money to live on. I paid her rent, and then eventually she tells me, for this case to go away and for her to get her inheritance, all she needs is $50,000 to pay legal fees, and she can get her inheritance. And she would show me emails and text messages from her barristers confirming this story. So I believed her, and I loved her. You know, love blinds you. So in all, I loaned her about, close to $100,000 to help the legal fight, get her inheritance. And even saying that out loud, I feel like an idiot. I just didn't know. I had no idea.
What did you eventually discover about your best friend?
Well, you know that expression, lies are like rats. When you see one, it means there are thousands of others hiding. I caught her in one lie. So after the money exchanged hands, the $50,000 to clear up the legal mumbo jumbo for her inheritance, she tells me that the judge in her case is angry that I paid her legal fees, and he considers that money laundering because I put it on my credit cards. And at this time, I don't know a whole lot about the law. I'm like, is that money laundering? If it's going through my credit, okay, it made sense to me. So the judge is punishing her with a slap on the wrist. She's going to serve 30 days in jail. She calls me every day, collect from jail. No, I don't want you to come visit me. I don't want you to see me like this. But of course I insist. So I log on to the jail's website to schedule a visit, and I am stunned, because there it is on the jail's website, plain as day, the reason she's in jail. She was convicted of felony grand theft. And I suddenly couldn't breathe, like a heat washed over me, like, oh my God, her whole reason for being in jail is a lie. So I took off from work and went down to the courthouse. I pulled all the court records from her case, and I discovered everything she told me about her life was a lie. Like, there was no trumped up charges from the family. Nobody froze her bank accounts. That was all a lie. She was convicted of stealing $200,000 from the travel agency she worked for. And she scammed me to pay a plea agreement in that case, the $50,000, so she wouldn't have to spend 5 years in jail. She could just spend 30 days.
Jonathan, how much money did she scam from you?
Close to $100,000 is what she ended up costing me. I had to file for bankruptcy. Yeah, that bled me dry. Yeah.
Cecilia, you accrued more than £200,000 worth of debt. Were you still hopeful that Simon would pay you back?
Of course, you're always hopeful that the transfer is going to come in, because he was who he said he was. But the money never came.
When did you find out who Simon Levayev really was?
I contacted American Express, and they sent 2 special security agents to my work. And that's when I understood the severity of it. They came to my job 2 hours later, and I showed them the picture. And then they said that they've had a long investigation on him, and I was the last woman of 3-4 that they knew of. So.
Did they give you a name?
They didn't give me the real name then, but a bit later on, I got told to Google the name Shaman Hayut, and at that point in time, there was no other hits on Google than a Finnish article from 2015 that he has been sentenced to jail there, but no picture of him back then.
You'd had plans to move in together. You'd talked about starting a family. How did you process all this, that this guy wasn't who he said he was?
So at that point in time, I wanted to catch him. So I kept the relationship going, like, I love you messages. And he was wondering what was up. And I had to go back to Norway to get help, support from my family. And I think that was like the pain of having to be alone in London. And your entire life was ruined. I owned my apartment in Norway, and I knew that was gone. And the boyfriend that you thought you knew, you never even existed. And I think I've been raised in Norway, which is a very safe and we're a very trusting country. So when I realized that everything was a lie around you, you don't know how you're going to survive another day. And luckily I have a strong enough family and that support network that got me into a psychiatric ward, because I don't know if I'd even be sitting here. And I think that is maybe the biggest thing, is that the banks and everyone who's trying to get their money back should be happy that you're even alive still, because there's a lot of lives that they're not even here anymore, because they couldn't bear life and the shame and the guilt that are being inflicted on you.
Belle, 5 years ago you found yourself struggling quite a lot. What was happening in your life at the time?
When I was in high school, I had a really bad eating disorder, and I think that's when I found my self-worth was the lowest and I had no purpose. And then I got myself into serious financial difficulty, big debt. I started selling things that I didn't need anymore, and I'd sold an iPhone. I think it was only $200 or something. I'd got rid of my iPhone, and I remember the ad was still up and someone sent me a message saying, "Is this still available?" And I said yes, but I'd actually already sold the phone. And so that was the moment where I thought, this is so wrong, but I did it. And that's the difference.
So you sort of sold the phone a second time, took the money, but there was no phone to give.
Yes, correct.
You were charged with financial deception. You were given a community service order.
Yes.
You then got a new job.
Yes.
What happened there?
Life was good. I had a really good job. Things were going well. I was happy. And then I had moved into a new place, and the rent was definitely higher than I could afford to stay in. I was always getting by. And I remember one week I got a message from a landlord saying, "You've got to pay this rent now, or you're going to actually have to move out." And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't move out. And this is while I was working in marketing, and I had an invoice for an event that was paid to me, and I actually was meant to pay the other party, and I actually kept the $500 and paid my rent.
So you were faking invoices through your company?
Yeah, so there was a few times where I decided I will keep the money for this invoice and not pay the invoice back. And then I thought, but by the time that I actually have to, I'll have enough money to be able to do it. And that was the biggest problem. It's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's small. They might have been small amounts, but they add up. And someone that's not on a big wage, I turned my life into a web of destruction, really, instead of asking for help. And everyone has a choice, and I did.
How much money did you end up taking, I guess, from the company?
Yes, $16,000.
You were then arrested, charged and sentenced to 8 months in jail.
Yes.
What was it like being in the courtroom and hearing that?
That was the best and the worst day of my life in one, because finally everything had caught up, and I knew that from that day forward it was over, and that I could, whether people chose to believe it or not, I could turn my life around, and that was going to take time. But it was also the worst day of my life because I did not see that coming, but I would not change that if I had to do it over again now.
Did you say anything to the magistrate when your sentence was handed down?
Yes, I said, please, I want to pay back on record every single cent, which I have now. I did a work development order, which is like a salary sacrifice. So a percentage of what you earn is taken every month. And that's probably one thing I can at least put my hand up and say that, I did pay back every cent.
Dwayne, you were working as a retail manager when you started to struggle financially. Why was that?
As a young gay man in my teens, I was trying to find my identity. And so I felt that I needed to dress a certain way and be a certain way. And as a result of that, I wasn't earning enough money. And I think that's where the financial struggles emanated from.
You came up with an idea to earn some extra money. What was that idea?
I was a customer of this particular health insurance company, and I went in to get a new pair of glasses because I needed one. And at the end of that transaction, he asked, the particular person who worked there asked if I was a member of a health insurance company. And I said, yeah, I am, but I don't have the card or the things that I need to show. And he said, oh, don't worry about it, I'll print you a receipt and you can go on their website and make a claim. So a few days later, I then went on the website, made a claim, realised that there was no place to put the receipt in. So I rang the company and said, hey, I'm just making a claim. Where do I tender the receipt? And the lady on the phone kindly said, oh, no, don't worry about it. Just press it on and you'll be fine. And you'll only really need your receipt if you're audited. So I pressed the button and a few days later the money arrived. I thought, OK, maybe I'll give this a go. And I continued doing that and money came to the account with no particular sort of audit checks necessary.
Did you just have that account or did you have numerous accounts?
All of the accounts were under my name, but I probably had a number of different accounts with a number of different banks.
How many accounts are we talking about?
I think in total it was something like 109 different policies.
How did you feel every time you made a false claim?
Incredibly guilty. But as you go and you continue knowing that what you're doing is wrong and illegal and goes against the values that I was brought up with, I felt really guilty and I felt it was a very difficult situation to get out of.
You got caught for this in Adelaide and you did 12 months in a low security prison. You then moved to Melbourne and started up the same scam again. Mm-hmm. Why?
I think the assumption, right, is that you get caught and you get sent to prison. And prison is depicted by mainstream discourses, the media, the people in society as being, you're going to go there and you're going to be rehabilitated and all your problems are going to be fixed and you're going to leave prison as this new person. But the reality is, not just for me, but for everyone that goes to prisons, prison actually makes your life more difficult. Prison exacerbates the issues that you were probably feeling, the issues of feeling stigmatised and marginalised. Prison makes that worse. And you're, again, trying to find that sense of identity and you go back to what you know.
How much money did you defraud all up?
Altogether, it was around $300,000.
Tim, you've been a criminal psychologist for over 4 decades. What motivates people to commit financial fraud?
There's a number of factors, and we've heard about them tonight. With some people, it's about financial necessity, low self-esteem, the need to keep up with their peers and so on, and of course opportunity. And I'm sympathetic to those sorts of people. I've certainly examined many hundreds of them over the last 4 decades. Then there's the other people that are psychopathic, that they have no empathy.
So these are sort of serial con artists?
Serial con artists, and they're driven by money, but those people tend to offend and re-offend again when they have the opportunity to do so. So they're very clever at what they do, and they're untreatable.
Sean, you discovered your partner Arrow was also living with another man called Tim. Did you ever make contact with Tim?
Well, he contacted me. A few things had started not adding up and messaged me and said, hi, this is Tim, I assume you know about me. I've been with Arrow, Rebecca, for 18 months. Maybe we both have. I'm not sure exactly what to think. I said, yeah, call me, and yeah, we spoke the first time that night and then pretty much every night from then on.
You'd been caring for Arrow through her illness. What did you discover about that?
Nothing immediately, and Tim took a lot of convincing that, yeah, maybe she didn't have cancer. And when she was messaging me about the miscarriage and what all the doctors and nurses are saying, that would have been from Tim's tent down and the campsite. So everything was a lie. Like, basically, for me at that point, everything was a lie.
So she was never pregnant?
Never pregnant, no. Thing that I've always wondered, what does she gain out of telling me we're having a kid and then making me, like saying, call your mum immediately, tell her I've had a miscarriage because I'm going to break down if she contacts me. But that power and control, I guess, is what she was doing that for.
The police ended up charging Arrow, whose real name is Rebecca Gray. What was it like seeing her again?
First, after we found everything out, first thing we did was try and get in contact with the father. And seeing her in that fucking wheelchair. Sorry.
Tell us about this. This is in court.
Oh, yeah, we're getting to that. So we tried to get in touch with the dad. He was trying to get custody of the kid back. He had been through a similar ordeal, but over 4 years, she was pretending to be dying with him. So she found out that we had been in contact with Mark, the dad, and She came out to my house one night, uninvited, and I just got a knock on the door, and it was her. And that's the first time I saw her after I knew. And she was just, you're talking to people that hate me, you're blah, blah, blah. But that was the most cathartic point of the whole thing, because I got to tell her, you do deserve it. You deserve absolutely everything you get out of my house. But then she's crying and saying, look, like, I still love you. We'd screenshotted all these messages and videos. We knew the whole thing by then. And so I just said no, and then she pretended to sort of faint and be lightheaded, and I was like, you call an ambulance, I'm not taking you anywhere. Like, so she did. But then when we saw her in court...
What happened that day in court?
First of all, the only reason she ended up getting arrested was because she started going back to the detective, the same one she was saying, giving stalking allegations about the dad, and accused me and Tim, said that we were now stalking her, and that basically meant that I had to go in and do an interview with this detective, and I gave him all my evidence, and he ended up arresting her. A long, drawn-out process. It took months and months and months, but she was now telling people she has a functional neurological disorder, and telling everyone she never pretended to have cancer. She's now got this neurological disorder. She can't walk, but she'd never said that to us. We'd never heard anything about. She's always been able to walk just fine. And then when we went to court, she was being wheeled in by her mum and out by her mum in a wheelchair, unable to walk.
Did you believe that she needed the wheelchair?
I don't think you need to ask that.
Did she do any time, even though she pled guilty?
No. She'd slap on the wrist, first offence. The judge was very sorry.
Jonathan, 6 years after you met Mayor Smith, she went to trial. She conned $100,000 from you. What was it like to see her face justice?
Oh, it was so satisfying, and watching it, well, so it was a process, right? So she got a 5-year sentence, and at that point, when the conviction, when the juror got up and said, we find her guilty, I was just like, yeah, I was just relieved.
Did she serve her full 5 years?
No. She ended up serving 2 years almost of the 5-year sentence, and she got out in December of 2020 early because of COVID, because the state of California was trying to stem the spread of COVID in jails, and they let a bunch of nonviolent offenders out, and she was one of them.
So do you think justice was served?
No, because she's out scamming people. It's just who she is. So justice won't be served until she's dead. I mean, that sounds bad, but that's how I feel. I'm sorry.
Julia, you're a private investigator. You've caught a con artist after chasing him for 7 years. Why are these people so difficult to catch?
Well, when we use the term con artist, that's exactly what they are. They're an artist. And as the years go past, they're also finding new things, such as technology available, that gives them better opportunities to meet more victims and really improve on that art form that they realised they had a particular skill in to begin with.
The con artist you caught was called Charlie. What was he charged with?
Turns out that he was an international con artist, and he had 2 warrants out for his arrest already in New Zealand. So he was eventually returned back to New Zealand and charged with 33 counts of fraud.
How many victims were in that New Zealand fraud?
Of that just particular fraud, where the warrants were involved, there was 65, I believe.
Did he serve any time in jail?
He served 2 years, but he was never charged for any of the other scams outside of New Zealand.
Is that sort of sentence likely to stop someone like Charlie from conning again?
He is now nearly 70, and I don't think he's going to change. He's just spent the downtime in jail, no doubt, working out how to perfect his next scam.
Cecilia, you went to your home country, Norway's biggest newspaper, to tell your story. What did their investigation reveal?
Well, that he as well was an international fraudster that has been doing this for several years and gone back to since he was a child. He's never done anything else. So each time when he goes to jail, he just gets better. And then it ends up with Simon Levive.
And his name, which we learnt, was Shimon Hayut.
Yeah.
He was from a poor area, is that correct?
Yeah, a poor area in Israel, so he's the son of a rabbi.
When that article was published, what reaction did you receive?
I think that everyone who's been conned can that is your fault, that you're the one to be blamed, and particularly Gold Digger, that you just went after him for the money. And I have to say, I'm the worst gold digger ever. I don't understand where that comes from. Gold digger takes money they don't give. So that was a very bad thing if I was that. But we as society managed to just talk more about scams in general, so it comes up more into the light, that they can't swim in the dark anymore, and I'm tired of it. We need to stop the victim blaming and shaming, because it just suddenly it can be you that gets conned.
Tim, is it common for victims of cons and scams to be blamed and shamed?
From my observations, it is. It's quite inappropriate, but people always want somebody to hang the blame on. We like to believe people. We look for the best in people. And what tends to happen is by the time that the red flags start waving, you're so far immersed into the con and the story that there's a real dissonance. You don't want to believe it because you want to believe in the person. And I think it's very unfair how victims are blamed in this way.
Sean, did you experience any victim shaming?
Not really. I don't know whether it's the gender makes it different. I can't believe anyone could hear any of these stories and think, that's the person that you're going to point the finger at. It's at the victims.
Sharon, you did experience victim shaming. What sort of things did people say to you?
Oh, look, I've been called dumb, stupid, said, oh, well, that's what happens to public servants. You name it, and the vilifying is immense. I agree with what others have said, we need to shift the focus. The focus needs to shift from the victims onto the criminals. And until we start to do that, nothing's going to change.
Cecilia, in 2018, you were conned out of £200,000. How were you treated by the banks and the police?
The police in Norway dropped the case after 1 month, and the UK police took on the case, but then they turned it around me after the first Tinder Swindler came out, and I became a suspect because I'd sent in false documentation, and I was a suspect for a year, waiting, hoping that they wouldn't indict me, and then they dropped my case against him and dropped the case against me as well.
And in terms of the money, are you still being chased down for that?
Yeah, I made myself bankrupt in the UK because they went after me there. But my Norwegian creditors, they don't want to go into that bankruptcy. So it's still accumulating. So it's over £300,000 now. So
how would you like to see victims of cons treated by authorities?
Oh, with empathy, as that you are actually been abused, that you've been in an abusive relationship. We need to be heard, we need to be seen, at least felt that they're trying to get justice.
Andrew, you're an expert on fraud, a former policeman and a barrister. How do so many of these con artists get away with it?
It's a bit of a perfect storm. Speaking generally, I would say there are 3 issues. I think there's a massive underreporting of this worldwide. Fraud is complex and difficult to investigate, and when prosecuting, you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt in this jurisdiction. So that's the second issue. And the third issue is, in my experience, that I think law enforcement generally tend to lack the motivation, the training and the resources to really do this sort of work.
How hard is it to get your money back?
According to the ACCC, if you're a victim of an online scam, you're unlikely to get your money back. That's not my experience. Don't rely upon the police to get your money back, because it's not their job to get your money back. Their job is to get a conviction. The civil courts is where you get your money. I mean, we get freezing orders over assets, search orders to enter premises, image phones, laptops, etc. So it depends on the circumstances, of course, but certainly the key takeaway would be that the civil courts are there and it's much easier to prove.
Belle, you've been out of prison for a year.
Yeah.
What does life look like now for you?
I know it's early days and things, but it's been 1 year and 1 month, but I'm building a wonderful life. I have paid back my debt and I am now working with an organisation called QWOOP, which is keeping women out of prison. Working with these organisations, people think, oh, she's, come out and she wants to be like Mother Teresa or things, but I think they have to know too that I will carry that label now that I have gone to jail for the rest of my life, and I am, no matter how hard I work and no matter what I do to help people, I will always be banded in with a lot of other people that don't ever stop committing fraud and things. And I've got an amazing job and things, and I'm also expecting a baby in 2 months. And, I would never have thought I could have built the life in this time that I have now.
Dwayne, you were sent to prison again in Melbourne for 2 years for ripping off a health fund. Did jail change you that time?
Whilst I was in jail, I completed this program called the Insight Exchange Program, which is run by RMIT University in Melbourne. And it works together with individuals or students studying criminology or social work or that related field. And together we study one subject. And through that process, I found myself being really passionate about criminal justice cause and social issues causes. After that program, I then consequently decided to re-engage in university studies, and now I'm continuing in higher education.
What's it like to start again with a criminal record?
Very difficult, and particularly for white-collar offenders. We know through literature that individuals that engage in white-collar offending generally are more intelligent, have entered professional fields, and those professional fields and those types of industries tend to be more closed and less forgiving and more protective of what they do. But what makes it more difficult is the media attention and the sensationalism that is, depicted.
Jonathan, despite everything that's happened, you've said that you're grateful to Mayor Smith. Why is that?
I am grateful to Mayor Smith in the end because, and I would never imagine in a million years I would be saying that, because like any difficult or impossible hardship in life, it makes you a better person. I interviewed dozens of victims of Mayor Smith and kind of realized that this is a public service. Putting my story out there in a podcast has inspired so many people to contact me saying, I listened to the podcast and I saw similarities between someone in my life, and thank you for helping me not get conned. I cut ties with them. I saw what they were doing, because con artists are playing from the same playbook. All the cons are essentially the same. I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And there's a differentiation between a psychopathic con artist like the one who scammed me and the Tinder swindler per se, and the couple other young people you have in your audience who just got caught up in the demands of life and needed money and needed a quick fix and made a wrong decision. They've clearly turned their lives around. They're clearly not psychopaths. I applaud them for going public and turning their life around, and I wish them the best, but most con artists are not like that. Most con artists are psychopaths from birth, and they're never going to change. Initially, when I got conned or realized that I was conned, I thought God was punishing me. I thought, how could this happen to me? I'm a good person. I've done nothing but help people my entire life. But then I realized as the months went on, no, I think, God chose me, to stop this woman in her tracks and to save other people from her and now from other con artists, So it's become my life's work. It's really changed the trajectory of my life.
Cecilia, the man who conned you and countless others, Shimon Hayut, was extradited to Israel, but not for the crimes he committed against you. Are you hopeful you will see him behind bars one day?
We will see him behind bars. It's not a question. But I think the net is pulling in. He's desperate. He can't leave Israel. He is caught there, and he will face justice. But as I called him, like a slippery eel, I have no idea how. It's been 4 years now, and I got told that Amex would silence him for me in a week back in 2018, and I'm sitting here still. It's been very traumatizing to have your abuser go out there so publicly to say that you're lying and you're doing this for fame and money and everything, when all you want him in jail. That's all I want. I don't need my money back. That's from fraud. I want a criminal case against him where we as victims, I might not get justice for my case, but he's still defrauding to this day, as we say. As Jonathan say, they're never going to stop. So he's still defrauding to this day, so he will get caught.
And you're helping the Diamond family, the Vaev family as well. Is that right?
They've been contacting us because they've been getting hit by this documentary as well, because people are now thinking it's a genuine company, and he's been using them to, forge payslips and documents. So we're helping them, sending them what we have, and they have a criminal case against him in Israel now. So thank God there's someone with money, and power that can take the reins in this case. You shouldn't have to, as I say, but he messed with the wrong family. So hopefully we'll get him in Israel, because our biggest fault was that he was extradited to Israel. That's not what we wanted. We wanted him caught in Europe and face justice for what he did there. But hopefully in Israel he will face the justice that he deserves. And that's, I'm sorry to say, a long prison sentence, because he will never stop. He will never be rehabilitated. This is not a man that deserves to be free and can continue his cons.
Earlier this year, Shimon made this appearance on American television.
Oh, no.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here in Cameo. I'm Simon Levayev.
Simon Levayev has partnered with Cameo to record personal birthday greetings and messages for $199 a pop, and he's poking fun at his reputation.
Patrick asked me to wish you an happy birthday. You cannot copy my trick of using his credit card.
We're working on a movie based on my life, kind of Catch Me If You Can, Wolf of Wall Street. I did receive a few offers.
He also claims to have made a book deal and has a reality show in the works. What do you make of this?
People were laughing at us and how we can believe what he's saying, but the minute he talks on, then everyone believes what he's saying. It's all theatrics. Nothing's real. He was going to make a song with 50 Cent in a Broadway show called The Tinder Swindler. And I don't like people making him a laughing stock, because he's destroyed people's life and people are scared of him. So I don't think it's a laughing matter, but don't believe a word that is coming out of his mouth. It's all smokes and mirrors.
You were in love with this man. How do you feel about him now?
Oh, it's a very strong hate, but as I know, he has no empathy. You're never going to get a clear answer from him. So hate and disappointed in the system, I can say.
Sean, you fell in love with a con woman, but you also built a father-like bond with her son. Do you still have a relationship with him?
Yeah, I always will. Yeah, we Skyped on the weekend, actually. We have regular contact with pretty much everyone that was involved, I think, and there's probably a lot of people in this room that are the same or that have experienced the same. A lot of the victims, and Rebecca, Arrow, whatever she's calling herself now, is no different to anyone else. We've all been through it. We all know and love each other, and yeah, the little girl will be a son to me, for the rest of my life.
Sharon, did you ever find out who Frank was?
No, I'm more likely to believe that it was, if not a drug cartel, certainly a network behind it. Certainly not one person in my case.
How have you been able to reconcile this extraordinary turn of events in your life?
As others have mentioned, I wouldn't probably be here today either if it wasn't for my family. Who stood by me, my family, my friends, right from day one.
When you were in prison, you wrote something on the wall. What was that?
It was a saying, and it was a saying by a man who I have always respected the whole of my life, Nelson Mandela. And he had a saying that was, "Forgiveness liberates the soul." And so for me, when I heard that, I thought, man, this person spent 26 years in prison. He could come out of prison and forgive all of those people that had put him there, essentially. And I thought, well, if he can forgive everybody after 26 years, surely I can move on with my life. And not being bitter and twisted was really important for me. Because if that had happened, they would have won. Whereas I knew that if I could come out of this, stand up strong, talk about my story, help others, then I'm giving awareness to it. It's not enough, because 11 years down the track, you know, it's happening probably even more than it was 11 years ago. And that I find really concerning. I've been with victims to the police. It's been atrocious. You know, sometimes they won't even give a number. You know, there's a case number or a whatever number, you know. I always encourage the victims to ask for that so that at least it's recorded. But we have no idea of how serious this is as a global issue.
Thank you so much. That's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much to all of you for sharing so openly and honestly. It's been such an honour to share this space with you tonight. Thank you too for watching.